When we first discussed linear transformations, we were talking about transformations between Euclidean spaces, and in this context, linear transformations were the same as matrix transformations, and so we were representing all of them with matrices. Take a vector from Rn, and you could multiply it by a matrix and get its transformed image in Rm. For example, this linear transformation from r cubed to r cubed has this as its standard matrix. Instead of plugging x1, x2, and x3 in here to compute its image, you could just multiply it by this standard matrix. We have since seen far more general linear transformations on all sorts of vector spaces, but today we'll make the surprising connection that every finite-dimensional linear transformation can in fact be represented by a matrix. The gist of how this is done can be shown in a simple diagram. We're going to let V be an n-dimensional vector space, W an m-dimensional vector space, and T is a linear transformation from V to W. We'll let BV be a basis for V, notice it has n vectors because V is n-dimensional, and we'll let BW be a basis for W. It has m vectors since W is m-dimensional. Then, for any vector v from the domain, we could put it through this transformation T, which would map it into its image in the codomain, which is T of v. Now, both the domain and the codomain have bases. We've got BV as a basis for V, and BW as a basis for W. So both V and its image, T of V, could be expressed as coordinate vectors relative to those bases. By expressing v as a coordinate vector with respect to the basis bv, and by expressing t of v as a coordinate vector with respect to the basis bw, we're representing these two vectors in Euclidean spaces. This would be in the space Rn, and this coordinate vector would be in the space Rm. And we know we can transform a vector from Rn into a vector in Rm by using a matrix. Indeed, if only we had a matrix A that we could multiply by V's coordinate vector that would take us to the image of V, that would give us another way to find the image of V using a matrix. Instead of just computing the transformation directly, we could write the coordinate vector for V relative to our basis, multiply that by this matrix A in order to get the coordinate vector of T of V with respect to the basis for W, and then based on the coordinate vector, we could write what the actual image of V is in that codomain space. So that's the idea. If we want to carry out a transformation using matrix multiplication instead of direct computation, we can transfer V into a coordinate vector, multiply that by the standard matrix, which is still the big mystery. How do we find that? But if we can find it, we multiply by that standard matrix, then we have the coordinate vector of the image in the codomain, and translate that coordinate vector to the image of V. So then our goal is to find this m by n matrix A, so that multiplying the coordinate vector V relative to the basis BV by this matrix A gets us to the coordinate vector for T of V with respect to that basis BW. We're going to call this critical equation equation star because we will refer back to it several times throughout the rest of this video. So how are we going to figure out what this matrix A is? Well, it does all come back to this equation. In this equation, multiplication by A maps V's coordinate vector relative to BV to T of V's coordinate vector relative to BW. And this equation has to hold for every vector in the domain V. It's not very useful if it only holds for one vector. It's got to hold for all of them. In that way, this matrix represents the whole linear transformation on all of those vectors. Now, indeed, if this equation has to hold for all vectors in the domain V, it certainly has to hold for the basis vectors in our basis BV. So then, from equation star, plugging in our n basis vectors for the domain V, we get this sequence of n equations. A must map the coordinate vector for V1 relative to the basis BV to the coordinate vector for T of V1 relative to the basis BW. A must map the coordinate vector for V2 relative to the basis BV to the coordinate vector for T of V2 relative to BW, and so on. But remember, these vectors on the left sides of these equations are the basis vectors. So the coordinate vector v1 relative to the basis bv is just 1, 0, 0, and so on, because v1 is the first vector in the basis. So its coordinates relative to that basis are just 1, which gives us the v1, and 0 of everything else. Similar, v2, that's the second vector in the basis, and so its coordinate vector is 0, and then 1, and then all zeros, and so on. The coordinate vector vn consists of all zeros until the nth component, which is 1. So now, looking back at these equations, we know what all of these coordinate vectors are relative to that basis bv. So each of these straightforward column vectors is getting multiplied on the left by this unknown matrix A. So let's focus on these left sides and see what that product is going to be when we multiply A by this coordinate vector, and when we multiply A by this coordinate vector, and so on. That looks like this. So we have our matrix A, which we do not know yet, on the left, and on the right it's getting multiplied by the coordinate vectors. When we multiply it by the coordinate vector for v1, since only the first component of v1 is non-zero, we see that if we do the multiplication, it's only going to be the entries that are in the first column of A, which get captured by that 1. Everything else is going to get hit with zeros, and so this product just produces the first column of this unknown matrix A. Similarly, when we multiply A by the coordinate vector for v2, if we do this multiplication, since everything except the second component of the coordinate vector is 0, it's only the second column, entries in the second column of A, that are going to get hit by that 1. Everything else is going to get hit with a 0, and so this product is just going to end up being the second column of the matrix A, and so on. When we multiply A by the coordinate vector for Vn, we're going to end up just with the nth column of A. So now we know what's on the left sides of each of these equations. On the left side of this one is just the first column of A. On the left side of the second equation is just the second column of A. On the left side of the nth equation is the nth column of A. And thus we have this sequence of more simple equations. The first column of A must equal the coordinate vector of t of v1 relative to bw. The second column of A must equal the coordinate vector of t of v2 relative to bw, and so on. In total, we see that the columns of this matrix A that represents the linear transformation are precisely the coordinate vectors of the images of the basis vectors of V relative to the basis of the codomain. So to construct this matrix that represents a linear transformation, we only have to find the images of the basis vectors. From that information, we can construct a matrix which represents the transformation, and if we like, we can then use matrix multiplication to enact the transformation. So that missing matrix A in equation star, the matrix A that we needed to find to complete our diagram to get from the coordinate vector V to the coordinate vector of its image, that matrix is this, the matrix whose columns are the coordinate vectors of the images of the basis vectors of V relative to the basis for the codomain. And this is called the matrix for T relative to the bases BV and BW, denoted like this, where you can see the basis of the codomain is second and the basis of the domain is first. Again, this is that matrix A in equation star, and so replacing matrix A in that equation with this notation, we get this new equation. The matrix for T relative to the bases BV and BW multiplied by the coordinate vector V relative to BV is going to send it to the coordinate vector for T of V relative to BW. Let's see an example of constructing a matrix for a linear transformation. We'll let T be the linear transformation from P1 to P2. Those are the vector spaces of polynomials up to degree 1 and up to degree 2, respectively. And this linear transformation is defined by this equation. It just takes a polynomial and maps it into that polynomial times x. Let's say we use the standard bases for the domain and codomain. So for P1, the standard basis contains 1 and x, and we're going to call that B1. For P2, the standard basis contains 1x and x squared, and we're going to call that basis B2. Now we know from our discussion that all we need to do to construct the matrix for this transformation relative to these bases is to find the images of the basis vectors for the domain under this transformation. So let's call that vector 1 v1, and we'll call x v2. We need to find the images of these vectors under the transformation. That's easy. Just plug them into the equation that defines t, and we get x and x squared. So these are the transformed images, and remember what we need to do is find the coordinate vector of the transformed images of the basis vectors. We need to find those coordinate vectors relative to the basis for the codomain. In this case, that means relative to the basis B2. T of V1 is x, which is the second vector in the basis for P2, so its coordinate vector relative to that basis looks like this, 0, 1, 0. T of V2 is x squared, which is the third vector in the basis B2, so its coordinate vector looks like that, 0, 0, 1. And it's these coordinate vectors of the images of the basis vectors for the domain, it's these coordinate vectors that we use as the columns for our matrix. The matrix for this transformation with respect to the bases B1 and B2 is denoted like that. We know that that's what we have to do to compute it, and we've now done the computations to see that it is this 3 by 2 matrix. And be sure to note how we've used those coordinate vectors of the images of the domain vectors to construct the columns of this transformation matrix. Of course, still talking about the same transformation, we could take any vector from the domain, which would have the form a plus bx, and it's pretty easy to calculate its image. Based on the definition, the image of a plus bx would just result from multiplying a plus bx by x. Thus, it would be ax plus bx squared. But let's see now how the matrix we just found could also be used to find this image. Instead of doing direct computation, we could write this arbitrary vector from the domain as its coordinate vector, multiply by the matrix for the transformation we just found to get the coordinate vector of its image, and then express that as an actual vector in the codomain. Letting v equals a plus bx be our arbitrary vector from the domain, we know that its coordinate vector, relative to the basis for P1, is just a, b. A is the constant, b is how much of x we need, so that is the coordinate vector. So then all we have to do to enact the transformation is to multiply this coordinate vector for v by the transformation matrix. This is the matrix that we just found. Doing the multiplication, we get this column vector, 0, a, b. That's the coordinate vector of the image of v relative to the basis b2 for the codomain. And then it's straightforward to construct t of v from its coordinate vector. How much of a constant do we need? We need 0 constants. How much of x do we need? We need ax. And how much of the third basis vector, x squared, do we need? We need bx squared. So t of v is 0 plus ax plus bx squared, so ax plus bx squared, just as we saw in the direct computation. And so you see how this transformation matrix accomplishes the exact same thing. And of course, computers are very well suited for matrix multiplication, so when a linear transformation can be represented that way, it makes it very easy for computational purposes, which is one reason this theory would be useful. To finish, it's worth remembering that these matrices for transformations are computed relative to certain bases, and so indeed a linear transformation could have many matrix representations depending on the basis selected for the domain and for the codomain. For example, the linear transformation from r squared to r cubed, defined by this equation, has this as its standard matrix relative to the standard bases. The first column is just the coefficients of x1, 1, -1, and 0, and the second column consists of the coefficients of x2, 2, 0, and 0. Of course, the standard bases are intuitive and in many cases are the preferred bases, but we are by no means restricted to using them. We could also choose a basis b consisting of these vectors for r squared and a basis b prime consisting of these vectors for r cubed. This would lead to a different transformation matrix, but still describing the same transformation, but its coordinate vectors would just be relative to different bases. To find what this new transformation matrix would look like, we first have to find the images of our basis vectors under this transformation. Taking v1 and plugging it into the transformation t, we have x1 plus 2x2, so that's 1 plus 6, which is 7. Then we have negative x1, which is negative 1, and then of course we have 0. Similarly, for t of v2, plugging this vector into this transformation, we get 6, 2, 0 as the image vector. Then, to write the coordinate vectors of these images with respect to these basis vectors, we need to figure out how to write these images as linear combinations of these basis vectors. Now, since the image of v1 has 0 in the third component, and w1 is the only basis vector that doesn't have 0 as its third component, we know that w1 is not going to appear in the linear combination, and so you can verify that t of v1 is equal to negative half w2 plus 8/3 w3. Similarly, t of v2 has 0 in its third component, and again, w1 is the only basis vector with a non-zero number in its third component, and so it can't possibly appear in the linear combination. You can verify that t of v2 is equal to w2 plus 4/3 w3. These coefficients of w2 and w3 will be part of the coordinate vectors relative to this basis. Of course, each image is going to have 0 copies of w1. And so the coordinate vectors of the images of r squared's basis vectors relative to these basis vectors for r cubed, those coordinate vectors are seen here. 0 of w1, negative 1/2 of w2, and 8/3 of w3. And similarly for the coordinate vector for t of v2. We then use these coordinate vectors of the images of the basis vectors as the columns for the transformation matrix relative to the bases. The transformation matrix for t relative to the bases b and b prime, which are these non-standard bases for r squared and r cubed. The standard matrix is seen here. Again, it consists of those coordinate vectors as its columns. You can see how this matrix is different from the one that we had with respect to the standard bases, but despite that, they represent the exact same linear transformation. So that's how to find matrices for linear transformations in general, and some examples of doing so. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and be sure to check out my linear algebra course and linear algebra exercises playlists in the description for more. If you find my videos helpful, please consider supporting what I do by joining Wrath of Math as a channel member. You can get early and exclusive access to additional videos and extra practice, and if you join at the premium tier or above, you can access the lecture notes used in this course.